I'm a roller.
Good evening. Seeing as it's 7:30, I'd like to call this Wednesday, September 12th, 2018 meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Tonight we'll be following the published and posted agenda. It will be recorded for future viewing by Chelmsford Media. If anyone else in the audience tonight recording, please let us know now. Seeing none. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes, and Pam, thank you for sending them out. I know I didn't have a chance to look at them. Anybody?
No,
Yeah.
I just got them, yeah.
Valiant effort, though. Was it 6:08 that they came to us?
Oh, I don't know.
Or something like that,
Yeah, 06, yeah.
All right. Right on. Well, before we go to the next item on the agenda, I'm going to beg your indulgence. I got a request from one of the small presenters for a quick item. He's on his third night of late meetings and early mornings. If we can take a vote to take Phil Stanway out of order under section 6 of the agenda for discussion on updated warrant articles for his article regarding the COSS.
I make a motion that we take him out of order.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Bill, you're out.
Well, actually, I didn't put this warrant items before by
By the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it came to a wonderful surprise to me a short time ago. As you know, Chelmsford Open Space Steward was formed in November.
Bill, you want to come up? That'd be great. Just the record, just say who you are and who you're representing here.
Phil Stanway, 6 Langston Lane, representing tonight as lead steward, Chelmsford Open Space Stewardship, volunteer wing of the town manager's office officially. The Open Space Stewardship formed in November 5th, 2005, with one site. To this date, we've helped or maintain, or are maintaining 19 sites in the town of Chelmsford. Wooded trails, farms, we built 4 community gardens. We also assist the land trust, we assist the Historic Society, we assist the Ball Center. We assisted, this last Sunday we had 5 events. So we helped the Baptist Church set up, then we had the Lutheran Church over doing trees. We had 2 Eagle Scout projects, and then we helped the Chelmsford Adult Baseball League. But that's pretty common to what we do. We run 4 major events, which is the Pumpkin Armada, which is free of course, the day before Thanksgiving Walk. We have Air Pumpkin, and the day after Thanksgiving Walk. So we run 4 major events. We don't collect any money at those. The Girl Scouts run those events. But again, we survive on small grants and begging, borrowing, and stealing. Funds are available from the town of Chelmsford, but there have always been a few problems with that. Conservation has $500 that's available, but they're real strict that we have to use it on conservation land. So if we have a weed whacker with gas, we can put in for it on Redwood Farm. But if we go to Sunny Meadow, now we're on town land, we cannot put in for it. And they'll give us some money, 500 goes pretty quick. With the CPC, you have to put a project and they give you 50% based on receipts, which is a long lead time. So we haven't used either of those really. We've done 60+ Eagle Scout projects for the last 12 years, huge amounts of those. But our funding has been pretty good. But with the advent of Hot Pond and Sunny Meadow, it put a big strain on it. It's an awful lot to cut grass. We have 6 more lawnmowers we maintain. We have an irrigation system we maintain. We have pumps. At this point, we're also supplying the mainline supplier of water to the Chays, the farmers there. We also help the farmer on the hill. So there's a lot of outgoing expense, and fundraising has been difficult. But if you look at what the town's collecting from those, if you take Sunny Meadow and Sheehan property and put them together, that's I think around $9,000 or something in that area to both those together. So what we're asking for is $3,000 of that. It was the same as if you had a house, you rented it to someone, you would put a percentage aside to keep the roof on and paint it. In the current situation, the town is renting the house and expecting the tenant to paint the house and move the house and build another house. Even though we can do it, this would give us some basic safety funding. It would just cover really nails, oil, wood, pots.
That was my next question. Okay.
And that would be the very bare minimum. It wouldn't be used for anything else. All the money is held by the town. It's transparent. You can go to the town manager's office and ask to see our accounts, and it shows everything we've spent it on. And we don't want to hire anyone for anything because we're just really Yankees. You know, we'll offer them some money for gas, and that's about it. We'll go to the paint store. If we're painting something white, we ask them for what whitish color paint we have, and we'll take 5 shades. It's outside, nobody notices. So the 3,000 would just give us that safety net, and I might be able to take my wife out once in a while. Because I'm giving her, I keep them digging into that pocket, and eventually one day she'll do that. But it's not an objection to what the town does. They've been wonderful to us. And we're still going to actively recruit in the community, because even those 3,000, what we do is, it's staggering. But that's why I thank you for taking me first. I can go home and get a nice sleep. It's 4 a.m. comes pretty quick. Try to get stuff done before I have to go to work in the morning.
Of course.
Are there any questions?
I think you covered it already.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, back to the agenda. We have a presentation discussion of tax classification committee report and recommendations. We have with us tonight our liaison, Shift Differential, and Mike Rizzi, the chair of the committee. You both step forward. Good evening. Hello.
Thank you so much for.
Tables are turned.
It's nice to be here. I kind of like being in the sun.
Welcome back, yeah.
Thanks. It's good to see everybody smiling on the war at night. The reason
It's early.
Voting nights next week.
Yeah, that's difficult. I want to thank you very much for allowing me to be the liaison to the Finance Committee, to the Tax Classification Committee for the Finance Committee. It meant a lot to me, and I enjoyed this, and Mike's been a fantastic chair, and I've learned a lot from everybody on the committee, so thank you. Where we are now is, and please elaborate.
This is your show, I think.
That's okay. We have looked through many different areas. We've looked through the tax ramifications. Amina was very nice to come before us and explained a lot and really helped our depth of information quite a bit. We've looked at the split tax rate in absolutely a lot of specifics and in depth. We've looked at the small commercial exemptions in depth. We've looked at the residential exemptions. We've looked at other exemptions and other reductions that residents could take. We've also looked at additional approaches, various and sundry ways to look at the same, type of process that would help our community. I think you have a copy of the presentation that Mike gave at the public input.
Yes.
So there, I will jump in. I have one sheet of corrections, and that would be for the final sheet. I think Jim might put those two. This is for the sheet that combines the 10% residential exemption, 10% small commercial exemption, and then 1.1 shift. The tax rate on the residential side changes twice in that scenario. Once from the split and one from the exemption. And that wasn't updated properly when I put the original spreadsheet together. So I've given you the revised and original numbers there. You can see for the CIP properties, there's no change. For the eligible residential properties, there's a little bit of change, and their reduction is greater or increase is less, depending on where they fall on the scale.
So this is just one of the many charts, data points, and graphs that we've looked at.
And scenes.
I'm just going to pass out basically. Last night we went through the format, what we want to do, what we want to present to the selectmen. How do we want to present it? This has been an ongoing discussion through every meeting actually. And Mike came up with this wonderful format, and we're going to be working on that very diligently this week, next week, and I'm sure the week after. So this is basically what we've decided, to go through, and how we're going to look at each area and through the explanation of each area. Hopefully, the community and the selectmen will understand what tax classification means and what it could mean and what it would mean if we looked at any different case scenario. Before we go any further, I would like to read the mission statement of the Tax Classification Study Committee. The purpose of the Tax Classification Study Committee will be to review the options available to relieve local real estate burden in Chelmsford. The committee will attempt to review and assess such options insofar as possible to recommend various courses of action for the Board of Selectmen to consider when deciding whether to adopt a uniform or split tax rate or any other measure of tax relief. Basically, I believe we're looking at this point, not to make a definitive recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, but to possibly give them different scenarios to look at. If this happened, what would the result of that be for the residents and the commercial?
Which I think was the original intent when it was first proposed. And I think it kind of morphed into, well, maybe there might be a recommendation. I know there's a lot of discussion you guys had over the weeks, whether or not there would be a single recommendation or multiple recommendations or 9 different recommendations. But I'm glad to see that it's morphed kind of into more of an informational format. And it kind of relieves sort of your position. So I know your concern was how you would take, if you would take, and how you would take direction from the finance committee. I don't think you really need to, if it's more of an informative exercise than a recommendation exercise.
I agree. Mike's also going to go through a SWOT exercise, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the various areas, and I think that will support all the information that we've looked at, today. So I think Mike probably wants to finish with that.
No, I'm good. I mean, I think if you guys have any questions, that might be appropriate, but I think Sheila's done an outstanding job of kind of telling me where we've come from and where we are and what the output should look like.
Well, I think because of the unenviable task of throwing together this recommendation portfolio by October 1st, which is, I hear Jim is your definite deadline that you want to meet. It's not going to be easy. So, as I said, unenviable. Does anybody have any questions regarding the information that's been provided so far, any of the meetings they've had? I think we're just all waiting for the report to be issued and see how the selectmen decide to proceed this year.
I'd just like to thank everybody on the committee for their efforts on this big commitment.
Thank you. And Sheila, especially, I think we'd like to thank you for your expertise on it, and especially being the former chair of this committee, being able and willing to step forward. I know I reached out to you while you were on vacation.
That's true.
Yeah. To see if you would be willing to participate. We're very thankful that you were.
Well, it's been a, really very interesting and fun in a way, because so many people on the committee have different opinions. But yet that's what a committee's for, is to all come together and work together. And it's been directed by Mike very nicely.
I will echo your sentiments. I've very much appreciated working with you, Sheila. You brought a lot to the committee, and I'm grateful for that.
Well, we've got a lot to do, I guess.
Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Next on our agenda, we have a presentation on discussion of warrant article 22, proposed ban on styrofoam, polystyrene containers. With the and the risk of butchering the activity.
Speakers.
Thank you.
Looks like spikers, sounds like sneakers.
Yeah, good way to remember it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Cynthia Peters. I am a resident of Pine Hill Road, Precinct 7, and I'm a nurse. I also have a passion for the ocean. As a nurse of 39 years, I've cared for and about others. And I come to you this evening with that same caring theme. Your support to prohibit the use of single-use polystyrene containers in the town of Chelmsford is my intention. Polystyrene is more commonly known as styrofoam. It was introduced into the United States in 1954 by the Dow Chemical Company. Its growth skyrocketed with fast food and takeouts. Many people are not aware of the effects of polystyrene, including myself, until recently. Did you know that it takes polystyrene 500 years to decompose? And it contains toxic substances, including styrene and benzene. Both styrene and benzene are included in the National Toxicology List of carcinogens. These can leach out from the containers into your food and beverages and are absorbed into our bloodstream and our tissue. Also, burning polystyrene releases styrene gas into the environment. As polystyrene has become a major component of plastic debris in the ocean, animals often mistake it for food and thereby transfer these toxic chemicals into our food chain. Polystyrene is a plastic and is also included in the calculations that if we don't have any changes by the year 2050, there'll be more plastic in the ocean than there are fish. And that will have an influence on our source of protein. And of note, as you all may know, China has recently banned recycled plastics from being imported. So our landfills and oceans are going to pile up. My research shows me that cities and towns that have banned polystyrene containers are nationwide and statewide. Nationwide, New York City and several other towns in New York, Seattle, Washington, D.C., Miami Beach, Florida, Freeport, Maine, Portland, Maine, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Portland, Oregon, and several other Oregon cities, Los Angeles County, San Francisco, California, and many other cities and counties in California. In Massachusetts, 26 cities have banned polystyrene. They include Amherst, Abington, Andover, Brookline, Cambridge, Concord, Dennis, Gloucester, Great Barrington and Greenfield, Hamilton, Ipswich, Lee, Lenox, Marblehead, Nantucket, Natick, Orleans, Pittsfield, Provincetown, Somerville, South Hadley, Stockbridge, Wayland, Wellfleet, Westfield, and our next town, Westford, Williamstown, and Winthrop. I've been in contact with Richard Coleman from Westford. He proposed the initial polystyrene ban in there, and he referred me to Colleen Wallace. She's the Director of Food Services in Westford, and I had the pleasure of speaking with her. Westford successfully implemented the ban townwide in July of last year. They currently use greenware. It's molded fiber trays with 5 and 3 compartments, and they use cups. Okay, so this is the numbers table here. Get ready. The change in dinnerware counted for about 10 to 20 cents per meal, out of the 50 cents that was added to each meal. So they added 50 cents because of other cost of living expenses, and about between 10 and 20% of that was because of the change in dinnerware. So there is a cost associated with this initiative. But the cost depends on the vendor. So they use greenware as their vendor, but I'm not familiar, and I don't know if it's appropriate for me to know what vendor we uses and what their cost would be. Businesses in Westford have complied with the bylaw, including Dunkin' Donuts, for example, and in fact, our chief of fire was at Dunkin' Donuts recently and had the experience of a new cup. And he said it was delightful.
They had a quote there?
Exactly.
Did you say
It was
delightful?
a Patriots Cup too.
I know there were some requests for extension based on supply and contracts. So this isn't something that just happens overnight, and there's a lot of work to be done with it. I presented this to the selectmen's meeting, and Paul Cohen recommended that I contact the superintendent of schools. So I did meet with Dr. Lang, a delightful man as well. One of his action steps in his goal for 2017 and 2018 in the school system is to establish collaborations with local communities, civic or governmental organizations that will encourage students to be informed and active in their community. So getting students involved in these initiatives is certainly one way to provide that. I've also been in contact with Nancy Antolini, and Dr. Lang would like me to meet with the school committee as well. He said that I think the head of the school committee is a scientist, and, excuse me?
Science teacher.
A science teacher, perfect. I talked to Nick Parlay, and he told me that primarily it's the school system and the senior center that provide cafeteria services in the town.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did speak to Tracy, the cafeteria coordinator. She said that they use minimal cups and styrofoam cups and straws, and she's planning on giving me some numbers for that, but she didn't really see it as a big effect. The effect would be obviously on the school system, primarily. That would be of our concern. I'm also, Nicole and I are scheduling a tour of our trash system in Haverhill, Covada Trash. We're gonna go on a tour next weekend to see what happens to our stuff. I didn't understand what happened. I didn't understand what happened. It's very interesting. I didn't understand what happened to our styrofoam before, and Nick told me, well, you know, it just gets burned with the other trash. But as it's burning styrofoam releases styrene. So educating our students and community is an opportune time while momentum for this is building. For young folks, it's their future. When we develop behaviors by example with our students, we are creating future engineers, future businessmen, future finance people, future scientists. And while we foster changes in behaviors of others in our community, we are improving awareness and we're providing education through everyday living that we're often too busy to seek or to understand. So in summary, polystyrene is a carcinogen. It has become a major component of debris in our oceans, in our landfills, and I would like for Chelmsford to join cities around the nation and cities within our own state and neighboring cities to include, by including our children in our community to educate. So reducing dependence on polystyrene is the best way to decrease its production and effect on our environment. And as we all know, it's easier to teach behaviors from the onset rather than to change our behaviors. So I am asking for your support and your recommendations, and I am ready. So do I have your support? You don't have to answer, I guess, but do you have any questions, or how can I?
Could you go back to, when you were discussing the 10 cents to 20 cents,
Yeah.
50 cents, would you?
So she told me that around last year there was a 50 cent increase in meal delivery, but only 10 to 20% of that had to do with the change in dinnerware. The rest of it had to do with other increases that were going to happen despite the dinnerware.
So it's 10 to 20% of the 50 cents, or 10 to 20 cents? Of
Cents.
10 to 20 cents.
Yeah.
I guess the question that flows from that is that end user cost that she's talking about? There's a 50 cent addition to the meal cost
Yes.
because of, okay.
But not all because of the dinnerware.
No, 10, 20 cents.
But
off the
there,
50
at the
cents.
time, there was a 50
The
cent
company's
increase.
demanding that there's a change, increased price, so we can blame it on the added cost of that, and it'll go up.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
So what's your definition of containers?
So polystyrene containers are cups or so in the school system, it would be the delivery
The
trays.
trays.
As I understand,
Okay.
they have little compartments in them so that they can,
And the bowls, because they're doing breakfast.
Bowls
So
or-
bowls for cereal.
yeah. So I have not been able, this is a bad time, it was the second week of school. So I've been trying to meet with Nancy Antolini to find out exactly what they do use. I asked her if they use, styrofoam, plastic, ceramic, what do they use? She said they use everything but ceramic, which would be the best thing to happen, but that's not gonna happen because that would be like, a $500,000 budget, and that's not anywhere in their site. So, so, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I was just trying to understand, I think when we all hear containers, we think just to-go containers. We don't necessarily realize that we're talking about cups, we're talking about bowls, we're talking about trays if they're used. So I just wanted to be clear on what containers meant.
That's correct. And in the community, you have your Dunkin' Donuts, styrofoam cups, and plastic and takeouts, as you mentioned. You have one too?
Yeah, she's hiding her. Mine's plastic.
Oh.
And then,
That's up next.
yes, I'm not saying it's any better, I'm just saying.
This article is for across the town, any food establishment, not just.
Oh, that's correct.
Yes, like this is the Dunkin' Donuts in Chelmsford, anybody who is selling.
Any business,
Any business.
right,
Is there a fine if they don't abide by it?
yes.
And what's the grace period for people to sort of get on board, given, like you had said, that some people ask for extension? What's the initial timeline?
So if this gets passed by at the town meeting in October, the tentative start date would be in July of 19. So if we pass it in October, we would have the year. Now, for some people that would be okay, and for others that have contracts that could cause a conflict. So if you want me to, so I'm on board with this. If you want me to go to different facilities or restaurants and get more detailed information, I'm happy to do that. What can I do to help?
Contracts are written in a manner that if the law changes.
It's an out.
Yeah, there's an out.
Right.
So
So as,
surprise.
thank you, 'cause as Dunkin' Donuts,
Yeah.
I'm sure have contracts and they are compliant.
Yeah, they're also, my understanding is Dunkin' Donuts as a whole is getting rid of styrofoam altogether in the next year.
Yeah. So this is a wave, this is not something that we're initiating, this is something that we can join and educate people about. I mean, I've learned so much just doing this, and there's so much more to learn.
So this
Who would enforce the
The Board of Health would enforce this. So as the Board of Health goes to visit a restaurant to check out their kitchen, they would, ask me, what kind of is using. Or if I, as a civilian, went into a restaurant and got a styrofoam, then I would report that.
In the other towns that do this in Massachusetts, is the fine substantial that would push them to not use it as a prohibited?
Yeah, so I do have some of that information, and I can look for that while I'm here. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I don't know how much.
Sure, so on ours, it said on page 11 that the first offense was $100 and the second offense was $2. I was curious if this came from the Westford or if this is what's actually being proposed.
It's both.
Okay, so $100 for the first offense, $200 for the second, third and subsequent are $300 for each, and then occurring within 2 years of the date of the first is considered additional.
So now, has that been the standard though across Massachusetts?
Right, that's my question.
I don't know, but I can find that out.
And then would we anticipate, or have they given any reports within the last year from Westford by chance as to how many really didn't comply? And would that mean additional folks to help to implement that? Should the Board of Health to do
Right.
consistent checks?
Okay.
which is a whole nother article.
Right, exactly, that's why I'm asking.
Just last Thursday, we were talking about the additional another inspector because they can't even get.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
700 and
So
some,
we're
that's
adding
why
something
I'm
like
There are
this in.
73 that we didn't see last year. This is just food establishments too, correct? Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
So it doesn't include, because I noted that expanded polystyrene is listed here, and it's also used heavily in packaging for electronics and machineware. And we have a lot of expanded polystyrene?
We're not going there.
Okay, all right.
What about,
You know, that's a very good point, however, we as individuals, we as a nation need to look at how we're designing our products. And what other, and that's where, you know, children come in with, you know, our future scientists and our future engineers. When we, for a simple example, when you buy a tube of toothpaste, you don't need a box and the tube of toothpaste. You just probably need the toothpaste. You don't need the box.
The
So
little wrapper over it.
yeah, with all this extra, you know, stuff, you probably don't need all those other things. And you know, maybe there's something different we can pack our stuff with, you know. And
Well, even
So
Amazon's coming out with the no hassle packaging, which has no styrofoam in it.
I love it,
But now that the little things are now like it's paper, it's like wrapped paper
Yeah.
instead of the twist ties.
so I sent out some emails to my town reps, and I sent it to the wrong group first, which was okay because I went back from there. That was, she asked me to compare and contrast the carbon footprint and the, you know, I'm not a scientist, and I'm hoping that people that develop new things, and I'm not going to hope, I'm going to monitor it, are going to develop things that aren't going to affect our environment and our future of our, you know, toxin in the body. So.
I had an additional question. This is only for food sources. So does that mean that in Westford they're still selling in the regular stores styrofoam cups and containers for other people to purchase?
You can, yes. This is only in
Restaurant.
food delivery in restaurants and cafeterias. You can still go to Market Basket and buy straws and styrofoam cups. For now.
Right.
They'll get on board too, but some big business is going to come along and sweep hold of it.
When you were talking about the school system and 10 to 20 cents per meal, did you mention how many meals they serve and what's the annual impact of that?
No,
Do you know?
I don't. And I'm not sure, that's a good question because I'm not sure if am I privy to that information? I mean, can I?
I would think you could request it.
I could request it.
Oh, definitely.
So like the annual, what's the annual budget for that and how much the annual budget is?
How many meals they serve, right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'll ask them for Western, but I think something must be here to go about with the Chelmsford system. I mean, how many meals do they serve?
But I think that addition was passed on to the families.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's still a appreciable impact, I mean.
Sure.
So if you're saying that the meal goes up 50 cents, that's, you know, $2.50 a week per child.
Well, it's 20 cents, yeah, it's 20 cents per meal. Times 180 days of the school year, in that case, getting hot lunch every day.
$36.
That's $36. Yeah.
A kid
A kid,
per year.
free.
So is that a lot?
Well, it depends on who you're asking. You'll find that on me.
So prepare me.
Well, I mean, what's going to happen is it's going to be a matter of does your audience think that $36 per person per year in the school district is worth the potential benefits? That's what it comes down to.
Or 3 kids, $180 a year, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, we're looking at a lot of different price impacts that are coming along the way, such as the stormwater surge in our sewer.
Well, I mean, inevitably, something like this is going to, a portion
Oh,
of
no,
it is going to
I'm
have
not
to be
saying
passed
it's
on to the parents.
Yeah.
You know, the school isn't going to absorb that whole amount. The lunch cost is going to go up.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's something to think about. I'm not saying I'm not supporting it, I'm just letting you know what,
No, I
what's
appreciate
gonna
it,
happen.
that's why, yeah, I appreciate
As
that.
I said, this is your dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is,
So much.
we're kind.
So I've heard.
I don't like how Paul laughed.
Very interesting. So, I did notice that a lot of the towns you mentioned, at least currently in Massachusetts, are coastal towns. I'd be very interested to see what the impact has been in those towns, such as Westford or Amherst, or Natick and Wayland and yeah.
Somerville, yeah.
Well, Somerville is
Somerville
close
is
enough.
close enough, yeah.
That they
But
open
more
some-
landlocked, yeah.
Definitely more landlocked, yeah. Because I can see the initial impact and the concern in those coastal towns. And as you go further inland, it's more like what we're facing.
Right.
And what both the impact and also the appreciation for it will be. So it'd be interesting to hear, and you might want to take a look at what those towns, those more landlocked towns, how that implementation's gone, what that's looked like, and how it's really affected them.
Okay.
Your presentation was wonderful. Are you gonna be doing, are you gonna have some sort of visual element at town meeting?
Yeah, yes, Nicole and I talked about that.
They like to see stuff,
Okay.
But not too much stuff.
but not too much.
Right. I know.
Yeah, but the information was good. The problem is if you're just reading it to them, they're gonna zone out.
Think picture book.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
graph, something.
Pictures?
Yeah, something.
Okay.
But Jim is right, less is more.
Was mine too much today?
No.
Well, you don't wanna show up with 40 slides.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So I've been a nurse leader, so I've done presentations before, so I understand that, but I appreciate any
No, of course.
comments as well.
Yep, no,
Because based on the number, you're gonna come towards the end of, God, I hope the first night. We've all lost. Wishful thinking.
Are you feeling okay?
No, but you put it out into the universe, it might happen.
Third night baby.
It's gonna be my birthday.
So I
after
put
all.
out, so what I had thought about it, and I don't want to, so I can be very dramatic, but I don't want, but that might, that kind of.
We don't want to fearmonger.
you have to consider your
But
audience.
if I bring samples,
Yeah.
Whatever you
Maybe we'll donate.
I have
I'll get you some, yes.
No, but it's about what you think will have the most impact for the goal that you're looking for. And so I can't tell you specifically what's going to work best for what you're trying to accomplish, but I can say that if you take a look at a couple of town meetings, you'll see what does work and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
okay,
And there are some pretty specific situations and examples of what doesn't work. So I'm going to leave that to your
Trust me,
advice.
I know when you see it.
You know when you see it.
okay.
I have one more question,
Yeah.
sorry. So a couple of times while we've been talking, you mentioned straws, but that's not,
That's coming next.
oh, that's, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
I was gonna,
So
did you bring forth the straw one as well?
No.
Oh, that's you, okay,
No,
all right.
I brought that up at the selectmen's meeting because Nicole was out of the country and I
Mhm.
wanted to make sure that it got into some discussion somewhere, so
Okay.
I included both of them.
Are either of you on that recycling committee?
I just joined.
Oh, good,
I'm
You
2
did.
meetings.
wonderful.
Okay. Well, the reason why I'm going to hear tonight from them is because I reached out to Chris Woodward, not realizing that he's no longer the chair. Yes.
So I gotta update the website.
Yes. He did get back to me. And so Rebecca Gore, thank you, John, for tracking it down for me, is now the chair. And as I checked the minutes weren't quite up to date yet either, so I couldn't tell. But I will reach out to her regarding that first article in that grouping in the plastic bags.
Yeah, did you want to see, did you want Kevin to present something to you about the plastic bags, or you want
If Kevin is more comfortable doing it, if Rebecca would like him to do that, that's certainly fine. I usually reach out to the chair, and whoever wants to attend for the group does so.
Oh, here,
Here, for us,
okay.
yes.
all right.
So whoever, I know that it was recycling committee that presented the article, and at the time that it was presented, I believe Chris was the chair, and therefore, you the point of contact for it. It's being presented by a committee and not an individual citizen,
Yeah.
it's a citizen's petition. But really, anyone from the committee that is comfortable with presenting is more than welcome to do so. We just ask if they're available next Thursday when we're voting.
Okay,
We-
so I can forward Kevin your information and he can contact you?
That's fine, yeah,
Okay.
if they want to attend that and give a presentation, that's more than okay. But I am still gonna reach out to Rebecca as she's the chair,
Okay.
and mention that Kevin had been mentioned by you. So we'll do that. Does anybody else have any questions?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, then I'm continuing at it, but up next is the presentation and discussion warrant article number 23, proposed ban on single-use plastic straws and strips. And Nicole, and I'm not going to try to butcher your last name either.
Shia.
Gia? Okay. And
It's fine. Okay, not
It
just
is,
saying.
it is spelled correctly on the one that was posted. I noticed when it went out that it was not, when it went to you in the email, but I was working that, so I apologize for that.
It's usually misspelled at least once. So, my name is Nicole Shiana, I'm 66 Mill Road. I'm also a town meeting representative for this fall. So I can give Cynthia plenty of information about what works.
So you know it, yes.
I know it's going to be like in Article 20. This is a judgment-free zone. Educational is our point, but here are some examples of what we could be using instead of the this one is perfect for especially people with disabilities, and of course, because of the silicon at the end.
They also have full
That's what I was
silicone.
going to ask you about with yes, these. I've used these for years.
So we actually we went on a cruise, and the cruise last year, and the cruise lines don't allow straws anymore.
Mhm.
And you can't even bring plastic straws with you. You can bring paper straws, or you can bring, we brought silicone ones that look just like that. They bend, but they're silicone all the way down.
Yeah, I can't give you this
That's
because I just took it out of my
exactly what
drink,
we
but,
use, yeah.
but this is the
Amazon, I got like a
straw.
pack, a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only problem was we kept
And
them.
actually, Cynthia has told me as a nurse, she converted these silicone to plastic.
Yeah.
To prevent
Especially,
patients.
yeah.
For danger,
For biting.
For biting.
Yeah.
I knew Newburyport was using, a lot of the restaurants are using, it's suggested, not enforced, use of straws, and they're using paper straws. So
Yeah.
few restaurants.
I don't have any paper ones. I tend to use reusables rather than one-use.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, we're kind of jumping before you
That's okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. Because I'm a town meeting rep, I know we love PowerPoints, so I did actually produce one. I do have a thumb drive, but it's very basic. But if anybody would like to just look at the talking points that I have, I've got a few more copies. Again, I try not to overdo this because of environmental reasons.
So you have a thumb drive, we can.
I do have a thumb
drive.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to do it.
This will not be the presentation I will put at the town meeting, though. This
Well,
is put together very, very quickly.
We're a rough draft.
Yes, and I need it to be more interesting than.
That's all right, we're good. We expect, we don't expect nothing. We don't need shiny things.
It's the sunlight that goes in the
More hard facts.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sorry, that's what I'll keep doing if I have a minute straw.
Yes, it's a very cool
Oh, I know, we have a few at home.
Did you say King?
Yes, it's under canon, and then it literally just says.
This one?
That's it.
You guys are done.
Oh,
You guys are done.
great, so it's first page. Next page. Oh, I should do that, that's great.
Perfect.
So I would like to say, I'll keep this brief, I know you have a very packed agenda. We expect a bit of time, and I also want to, sorry for the overuse of reading from notes.
That's
I
fine.
love public
don't worry
speaking,
about
but
that.
as soon as you put a camera on me, I start to shake. So,
That's all right, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it again, this is your
thank you.
dress rehearsal.
All right, thanks. So I am here as a spokesperson for a concerned group of Chelmsford residents, and for the specific request of my teenage daughter. For her and her peers, single-use plastic is one of the most urgent, critical issues that they know they are going to have to face, that they are going to have to deal with as adults. Cynthia mentioned the research that's just come out of the World Economic Forum that is believed by 2050 we will have pound per pound more plastic in the oceans than we have fish. This is a problem that's urgent and needs to be dealt with now. Plastic use increased 20-fold. This is not on my PowerPoint. 20-fold in the last 50 years, and was predicted to double again in the next 20 years. So this is a critically urgent problem, which is why we're seeing the groundswell of concern that's coming up right now because this research is coming out. The intention of this petition is to change the responsibility for providing straws, which are mostly plastic, from food purveying businesses in town to a choice by consumers to use none or to bring their own. Under no circumstances is this a ban on plastic straws in restaurants. You can bring plastic straws if you need them, if you require them, if you want them into restaurants for your own personal use. The reason for most of us, is that using a straw is a habit. We use it because they are put in front of us without really thinking. I do it myself. And it's really, once you've opened your eyes to them, you begin to see the prevalence. So we talked about the problem. The next slide. 8 million metric tons of plastic go into the oceans every year. It's predicted about a third of all plastic escapes collection systems, and that's the result we're seeing. 60% of seabirds, 100% of sea turtles have ingested plastic. Recently, all mussels harvested on the coast of Britain, which matters to me, my child lives there at the moment, have shown evidence of microplastics. So if you're eating any seafood, shrimp, clams, mussels, lobsters, you're eating microplastics. And research is ongoing right now about the consequences of that. It has entered our future. 170 million to 390 million plastic straws are used per day in the US. There is a figure of 500 million that you will see out there. That number is, suspect. The ones I've given, 170 to 390, are the result of rigorous market research throughout the supply chain, so I prefer to use those numbers. You can see the problems there. Plastic straws and straws are not recyclable. People think they are. They put them into the recycling process. They are specifically banned from recycling in Chelmsford. If you put plastic straws into the recycling process, you are potentially contaminating the entire process, which is Can we have the project next? Okay. So why are we concentrating on plastic straws? They seem to be a small part of the problem. The issue is because for many, again, it's an easy one-use plastic to give up. We don't use straws very often in our homes. We don't use them for a lot of our drinks. We use them out of habit in restaurants. We don't have to. It's an easy one. They are known as a gateway plastic. As I mentioned before, once you begin to not use plastic straws and realize that you can get by quite happily without them, you begin to notice one use everywhere you look. We cannot give up a lot of plastic. You go into a supermarket, it is everywhere, one-use plastic. You can't buy food without having one-use plastic wrapped around it. But there are areas where we can begin to make a difference. Straws are. I mentioned they cannot be recycled. They are disposed of after one use. People like me who take plastic straws home and wash them out are in a very small minority. So the only, I find it very therapeutic.
My grandmother used to wash out the Ziploc bags.
Well,
There's also concern about reusing and stuff like that because of the degradation of the plastic.
Right. So that's why for me, plastic straws don't go through a dishwasher. The only way to control plastic straw and sterile waste is to reduce the use. This is all about reduction. So Cynthia mentioned, for instance, carbon footprints. That is not such an issue to me because we're not saying restaurants should replace each plastic straw with a paper straw. No. The point is just to take straws out of the situation entirely when it comes to restaurants. You can see that beaches are strewn with about 7.5 billion straws. And I mentioned that they are used, potentially they contaminate the recycling process when they enter that. So if we can have the next slide. There are solutions. Cynthia went over a lot of them. A great deal of movement is happening with banning and moving towards banning single-use plastics in particular. New York City and California have pending straw ban legislation. Provincetown, Massachusetts, in April of this year, banned straws. I have a request out to the town manager of Provincetown. We haven't yet been able to actually talk with him. I was asking him if you've had any issues or feedback or just some information that you can give. The Salem school system banned it this year, plastic straws. They changed over entirely to paper straws. And then from the article I read, they're actually going to be in contact, or are in contact, with the Chelmsford school system. Number of communities throughout the US, Sanibel Island, just this Monday, banned straws. This is happening now. Taiwan, New Delhi, Rio de Janeiro, EU, Britain, the European Union is putting together plans for reduction. India, Dominican, France, there are some pretty heinous fines out there, actually. I was just reading that Santa Barbara has a, let me wrote it down, $1,000 fine. Companies, it's increasing. You mentioned it before. We mentioned Starbucks, you mentioned the Dunkin' Donuts. Disney is banned. Royal Caribbean, you mentioned that, all of the hotels. It's happening throughout the world. The groundswell is swelling right now. So if we can go up. So here in Chelmsford, what are we suggesting? Adjustment period to July 2019 to enable restaurants to use up their stocks and for an educational adjustment period for consumers. I want to reiterate, this is not a complete ban on plastic straws. Plastic straws will still be sold in the aisles, supermarkets and markets. You can still get your plastic straws if you want plastic straws. This is not a complete ban. It is a step back compromise position from a complete plastic ban. It does not preclude you from bringing your own plastic straws into restaurants if you need them for your own personal reasons, or you want to use them for your own personal reasons. This is our, I would say, this is because we wish to be sensitive to the needs of those who need plastic straws. There is a part of the population that does need to have straws for medical and other reasons. We want to be sensitive to that process, but still not halt action that has to be taken to reduce the amount of plastic in our waste systems. I think that's pretty much, I tried to rush through as much as possible so that I don't lose too much time. Thank you for listening to me.
Well, I think you brought up a great point. You know, the fact that when you think about it, if we don't, like, I don't use plastic straws at home, ever. And the only time I ever do is when it's in my name at a restaurant.
Don't. And as I said, you see it, you begin to, I mean, I looked in the door.
See, no, I need
them.
them.
Yeah.
Because of my Invisalign, I'm required to do things.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
But I like the silicone ones.
Do you love them?
I know I do, I've used them, yeah, I know, I like them. My only problem is I leave them places. I forget that they're not a plastic straw, and I leave them in my drink as I leave the restaurant. So I have a couple of questions. So one was, straws were initially introduced due to hygiene issues, because people drinking out of cups were I mean, this was ages ago, were getting sick when people were, you know, that's why they were introduced in restaurants, not takeout, but more of a restaurant thing. Has there been a concern, or has the whole concept of the hygiene been addressed?
It's interesting how little of that concern comes up when you do research. The concern is always about the subset of our population that needs straws for medical reasons. I have seen, and I thought this myself, a response to that is, if you don't trust the restaurant to give you a clean cup, why are you eating there in the first place? That's wrong.
Drinking out of straw going to take away
Well, because the straw might be wrapped into, into paper, but there's surprisingly little out there about the hygiene concerns. Now, I think that maybe because of my own thinking, and I have no way of backing this up, it's a common sense idea, that because of all of the Board of Health all around who are doing so much checking, that maybe hygiene like that is not such an issue. anymore.
Okay.
And what about juice boxes?
Juice boxes are not included in this. If that little plastic straw comes along, I would love to say let's get rid of those tiny, but no, we're realistic here. If it comes along with those juice boxes, that's how it is. That would not impact anybody there.
And this will affect the fast food restaurants?
It will affect the fast food restaurants, yes, potentially more so probably than other restaurants. It was interesting. I haven't cited it, so I didn't put it on the PowerPoint. I found a market research that looked into consumers' reaction to reducing straws, and also looked into what type of restaurants those consumers were using. And you would assume that maybe it's the high-end restaurants that people are most okay with getting rid of their straws. I think it's a 50% to a 38% yes to no. It's actually from fast food restaurants. People who habitually use fast food restaurants, still 50% of the consumers were happy to give up a straw, which I found quite surprising. I was thinking that was going to be the area where it's most difficult.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to pop the lid and drink it, or bring your own straw, which is what I do. But this is an educational process. This is teaching ourselves that we have got into a habit that we can change for the environment. The purpose here really is to re-educate ourselves that we don't use these extra bits of plastic.
So the use of, you mentioned bringing your own plastic straws to
Yes.
restaurants. That concerns me only in the enforcement and penalty portion of this.
Yes.
Because if people are bringing in their own plastic straws to these restaurants, who's to say, someone says, especially with self-reporting, who's to say, someone to say, hey, they're using plastic straws here, what's the deal? Report them and this business is fine.
I can see that is an issue. No solution is perfect. I wish it was. I would hope that we would do this in a non-adversarial manner. That we're in this together, and that if somebody's using a plastic straw, it's not using a plastic straw that gets reported, it's seeing it being disseminated.
Yeah.
That is the issue. The usage is nothing, because we are saying to people, we are not trying to take away your need.
Yeah, and I don't know, I personally, I think in this day and age with cell phones, like when people are record, they don't take a picture and record. Like I just
Plus, this isn't anything new. I mean, just like with the styrofoam, we're not trailblazing here.
Yeah, no.
This is happening everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, if we're worried about someone complaining about it and like a business meeting, I mean, people just take pictures nowadays.
I think a lot of people are used to this, though. I mean, even before we got all of this a couple of weeks ago, my husband and I were at a restaurant, and I can't remember where we were. We were in Chelmsford. And some towns have gone to not just a ban, but they can have straws, but you have to ask for them. They don't just put them in the table or put them in the drink. And so the waiter said, "Did you want straws?" And my husband jokingly said, just because we had come off the cruise a while ago, said, "Well, while you're still having them, sure, why not?" And then I saw this and I told him about it, and he said, "Well, I mean, come on." He said, "If major companies like Royal Caribbean and Norwegian and Disney are doing it, eventually it's going to become so pervasive, it's going to be everywhere. We might as well just get used to it."
So Starbucks is planning in 2020, I believe, is the rollout for food straw.
McDonald's just voted down because they already have an initiative going on globally to roll out alternatives in select markets. They're doing market research right now, and they haven't advertised which markets in the US yet, but they're certainly doing it in Britain.
They were the ones who got rid of the styrofoam first.
Right.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Which I thought, to be quite honest, I thought that was good.
But I mean, now, I was talking to one of the officers on the Norwegian shipping line, and he said that they're actually doing research, that the paper straws didn't pass muster because halfway through a frozen drink, they're done. And you can't you can't mix around your ice and everything. So they're looking into biodegradable that looks like plastic, feels like plastic.
That leads me to my next question, because if you look in here, it specifically says that you cannot use corn or other plant sources for transfer.
No, this is very specific. Polymers and plant-based plastics are exempt from this because they do not biodegrade as you would hope they would.
Right.
They degrade. They need very specific environmental conditions in order to biodegrade completely. And not every compostable, municipal compostable facility is able to deal with them.
Mhm.
That's why they're not.
Basically-
There are other alternatives.
Yeah, no, the one the cruise lines are looking at is one that, well, in your drink, it won't dissolve, but after like a couple of hours in water, it will, without a chemical. So they were looking at stuff that like almost sugar-based.
So most of the ones that I have now is that the plant-based corn in here.
Yeah, they weren't gonna do those, because
They're
they said that.
biodegradable,
But
but
they're not biodegradable.
they have to be
Right.
in a compost, they have to
Yeah.
be put out in the sun, have to degrade
Exactly.
in
The
certain
cruise lines are
environment.
looking into stuff that if it blows into the ocean, it's not,
Get it killed.
It's not
it's not
gonna
gonna
kill
kill
a
the
fish,
seal.
it's not gonna stuck up a turtle's nose.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I refrained from showing horror stories on the PowerPoint, and I will continue to do that. I think none of us are living under a rock. We will know what's going on with our wildlife and our sea life at the moment. So there's no need to put that so much into our face. We understand what the
So that should probably turn people off.
Yes, I agree.
I think so. I think we want people we're all in this together. There is no throw away, there is only throw elsewhere. So,
Presenting it positively, I think, is the best.
Yeah, and I think your
Right.
point about the fact that it's a habit,
Mhm.
like, and, I mean, really, you think about it.
But it is for most people, yeah.
and what's interesting to me is that this, I said I'm doing this request of my daughter and her peers, and it is a growing concern of theirs.
How old is your daughter?
She's 18, she's just started college. First thing she did was join a group to ban plastic bottles on her campus. So it's one of the causes of their generation, and I don't blame them, because they're going to have to deal with
And
this.
we're very behind in the US in general. I mean, if you go to Europe and you grab a plastic bottle, the plastic is so thin that you will like.
You gotta squirt it
You
all
squirt
over.
it. I can't tell you how many times I've done that because it feels different, and we're so used to picking up a certain weight with our plastic bottles. But their laws it has to be so thin that I can't tell you how many times I have to get used to it being lighter and not to squeeze as much because of the
Then get
plastic.
home to you,
What was interesting to me was a trip to Seattle and San Francisco that we made this summer, and how just taken for granted it is that you don't use plastic bags, you don't use straws, you don't use. I mean, it was very interesting. It was just what you did. The habit just changed so fast and so easily.
People are very just, like human nature, they're resistant to change.
I did admit though, my bags, because I have a beach home in my town in York, banned all plastic bags. That I actually bring my donator's bags from Chelmsford up because when I go to the beach, it's hard to keep, like I like to put bags. So I can put my trash in and take it off.
We use our plastic straws
All the time.
But we're jumping to a whole different.
Yeah, we're going
Yes.
through a lot of discussion here. I think more on the question side, have you, now I know we put this together, is this based upon an adjustment of the polystyrene ban? Is there a ban in Westford as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues was I was literally leaving for Britain when all this was having to be done. So the group that put it together is based on, I think, both, and I don't want to be quoted on this one, both the Provincetown suggestion and also the plastic bag. I mean, the whole reason for this is raising awareness of plastic use. So,
Well, I mean, if we're talking about styrofoam, we're talking about plastic bags, why aren't we talking about straws? Would have been my question.
we did the whole thing.
Right.
It's an issue, just breaking them down into the components.
I don't think Westford has a
Oh,
No,
okay,
straw
yeah.
thing. I
This is
was
not
there
as
the other
common.
day and it was in my car.
It is not as common around here as the styrofoam. There is less information I can give you from local results.
Because it hasn't been implemented.
It has
But the
been.
styrofoam issue isn't new. I mean, I remember talking about that in the early 90s. But then it came back around again, right?
Remember the dolls and.
No, I remember. It was styrofoam, yeah, for burgers, yeah.
I just assumed that was a ban and this stuff was put like, this was a good time.
Well, I think what happened, if I remember
That's
correctly.
because it has coffee.
If I remember correctly, we went from styrofoam to paper products, and then there was an issue about paper because of trees, and then we went back to styrofoam, and now styrofoam is sort of making its way out again.
I think one of the issues is, or one of the reasons is growing research on the health consequences of our use of plastic. I mean, even microplastics, right now research is being done on the fact that what pollutants are being attracted and held by microplastics.
What are microplastics?
Microplastics are plastics that are degraded in the ocean and are down to less than 5 milliliter pieces.
Okay.
They're microplastics. Pretty
Thanks, Jim.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's like microfibers.
So it's not something that's actually created, it's what the plastic degrades to.
Into, and that's one of the issues, because the great plastic of
Although it
garbage.
is created in the process.
No, but I'm saying it's not like this bottle is, like, they have new bottles.
It's not a
new
BPA
technology,
conversion
right.
where, yeah, no.
It's not like nanotechnology.
Yeah, we're not seeing it in the great garbage patches, we're seeing it in other areas of the ocean. Yes.
Now, as far as the implementation is concerned, as you or anyone from your group, I have the people that are looking at this, have they gone out to a couple of those big businesses in the area and discussed this potential ban on these substances?
By big business, I mean, we're talking food, beverage.
Well, I'm sorry, but yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I have spoken to a sample, we are continuing with that, we're ongoing. Nobody wanted to be quoted, so I said, well, it's not on.
No, of course.
I would say realistically, the response was concerned to neutral.
What do you mean by concern?
About the implementation.
Implementation consequences, yes. Yes, because
not
of uncertainty.
So not concerned about the environmental
No,
impact. Concern about the business impact.
Concern about that, have no idea how this is going to necessarily play out. The neutral side would be towards the fact that, well, they won't have to buy straws, because we're not saying you have to provide, alternatives. They won't have less waste that have to deal with, and also neutral because of personal belief that it's a good thing, and also maybe the consumers will be positive about it. So I haven't yet seen any hesitation. Yes, this is great if they're a business owner, but I'm hoping to find someone. On the resident side, I would say we have reached out amongst a lot of us, to about 50 residents of Chelmsford, and uniformly positive. The only step back would be, can we be sensitive towards those who require experience?
Well, I like the fact that it's not a flow.
Exactly, that's the point.
Yeah.
I have one question. Reading through this, I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but nothing contained herein shall preclude the Board of Health from seeking equitable relief to enforce this bylaw. How or what did that mean exactly, or where did that come from?
I did not draw this up. I'm assuming because it's allowing the Board of Health to have some leeway.
Is that common?
What the Board of Health it's allowing for the enforcing agent to provide for their own implementation and enforcement, because at the end of the day, there has to be someone that's enforcing these bylaws that have been changed, and they have to have the ability to enforce it. And if they don't have the ability to enforce it and it's not being enforced, then the claim comes from someone saying, well, why aren't you enforcing what the bylaw says? Well, the answer is, at least from that entity, we are autonomous from this bylaw. We have the ability to enforce. We're supposed to enforce with the ability to enforce, but we also have the ability to make our own decisions on a case-by-case basis. And quite frankly, with the inspection, as we heard last Thursday night, we need to add another person just to get regular inspections done.
Right.
Yeah, I when I heard that on Board of Selectmen, I was thinking, this is, I really regret adding to the burden of the Board of Health. I mean, we use the Board of Health because Council told us that that was the right way to go. I have a lot of respect for what the employees of the town do, and I really regret any extra burden. So this is what I was hoping that we could move towards like an educational sort of way rather than adversarial way of actually doing this.
So upon reading that.
Why don't you think, I would think if we pass it, the establishments would make the change.
I would hope so. I
I
can see there's a benefit.
I'm lucky enough to spend part of my winter in Fort Myers Beach, and there are no straws. It's not a big deal. Nobody complains about it, and there's no additional cost. Now, I don't know anything about the enforcement. I don't. Be glad to go down there and if you want to say. Exactly.
That is part of the reason for doing it across the board. So that it's a social change that we're all undergoing. And so that if one restaurant doesn't in Chelmsford another restaurant, we're not asking one restaurant to pay differently.
So if there's I think I've heard groundswell used 3 times at this table.
Yes,
If there's a groundswell of this happening,
yes.
why make a rule? Why not just let society do it?
Urgency. Urgency, and because doing it on a community level is the way to make the most impact. Individually, we can make our own impacts, but it really makes a difference when entire communities do it together. And that's the reason for asking for a bylaw change.
And then the other comment was made that, this is gonna happen everywhere. I would group those cities on the left into pretty standard, left coast thinking. So it's not really everywhere. It's a pretty select, small group of cities that typically do this kind of thing.
Coastal towns too,
I
actually.
find
Yeah,
I
right.
find it a shame that we have to say that working towards bettering our environment is something that we need to think politically about. We're, as I said, we're all in this world together, and we all impacted by this. I know one of the reasons that we're seeing those is because environmental groups have made a decision to really work with groups who are already moving that way. So these are going to be the first, because these are the ones you can check off. Right? So as it becomes bigger and bigger, and as more and more big companies are coming into communities, I mean, everybody who has a Starbucks or a McDonald's is going to be impacted. So it'll, in my opinion, that is what we're seeing most particular. Also, coastal matters, because when you do coastal cleanups, you see this stuff.
Yep.
So I guess my question is, with the implementation, especially happening potentially in July, where a bylaw change has to go to the state, it goes before Secretary of State, it gets reviewed, the committee, they come back, usually bylaw changes come back
60 days.
60 days. So we're talking about a 5-6 month swing. But for the larger restaurants, for those chain restaurants that we have in town, we have a few, I guess the concern is there going to be some sort of backlash on them? Is there any sort of acknowledgement or mechanism to provide for I guess, a stay of the implementation? Because I know there are certain groups, like you mentioned, Starbucks. I'm not pick on them because I have it here, but also because they're listed there. I know that they're committed by 2020 to roll out and reduce and remove the straws, and it's already started using a lot on their smaller cups and on the new drinks. They started using these lip cups that don't have straws. I guess the concern I have is what kind of reaction we're going to see from them and how they're going to implement that in that amount of time.
I mean, obviously at this point we can't change the warrant. We can't change the article.
Well, it
So
could
is
be
there a mechanism outside of
friendly
that?
amended in
You can
the
push it
yeah.
back, you can push it back 6 months or 3 months, whatever.
Yeah.
It's within scope. You couldn't pull
You
it.
you can't make it shorter. You can make it longer, as long as it doesn't increase the cost that's been posted or decrease the time that's been posted. They can be changed. And usually, you see those as a change at town meeting, and even friendly amendments as well. It still provides enough notice to people. I think so. My concern is the timeline. I'm less concerned about the implementation. I'm more concerned about the timeline and the impact it's going to have. And just, I know that the town is going to accept all these disposable food items. How is that going to work? And just both this, I know we already talked about polystyrene. I'm not bringing that back in. And also the single-use straw stirrers. If there is a large quantity of stock in these restaurants that are required to produce these to the town, we're just going to do one giant trash collection in July, and I hate to see the waste of that as well.
I know, that kind of ruins the whole
We don't
purpose.
collect commercial trash.
Well, I'm reading
Yes,
this
it's in
bylaw, and the bylaw says, and I quote 4.3.
It does.
Individuals, contractors, vendors, or other entities shall not use disposable food service containers made from expanded polystyrene facility. It says, I'm reading the wrong section, I apologize.
No, yeah, you're right, it's in there. It's to say that it will be by July, the end of July, the DPW would accept any stocks that are left over.
Has the DPW been contacted about that?
No, it hasn't. As far as I'm aware, it may have been contacted by somebody else. I
You
haven't.
might want to reach out to them.
Yes.
Just it's a thought.
You don't want Gary finding out at town meeting.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was one of my concerns when I read through this article,
It was one of
and the
those.
others as well, yeah.
And I echo Jim's concern about the timeline. I think that, especially with the chains, that really, they can't just change the tops to their cup, especially if they're like a franchise. Those sorts of things have to go through corporate.
Oh,
So
yeah.
to just stop handing out straws and giving people to-go cups like this without the straw, I think they might run into some issues.
Especially with franchisees as
With
opposed to.
franchisees, right,
yeah.
because they can get into a lot of trouble if they don't conform. But giving them enough time to work something out with corporate, find an alternative, like I like Starbucks alternative with like the tops of the hot cups and Dunkin'
Stuff when you
Donuts.
get a bump.
And Dunkin' Donuts did that in Westford though. So the large,
So it's a franchise, and the franchise probably contacted Dunkin' Donuts, and they were luckily able to get a quick turnaround, but that's not always going to be the case.
right. So there is an owner of the Dunkin' Donuts that owns a lot of them in Chelmsford and Westford. There's one owner, I think that he owns 9 of the Dunkin' Donuts, and I did reach out to him, he didn't return my contacting, but we'll keep on him just to get that information. 'Cause I think
I'm less concerned about the
something that I'm worried
styrofoam. I
about
think the
as
styrofoam is gonna be easy, because most places, if they haven't switched, are on their way
A
to.
lot of places have already phased that out already, yeah.
Right, or they're on their way to, it's the straw one, I'm just thinking of like McDonald's, Burger King,
Yeah.
what if
Lowe's.
yes, what if they.
Is there any
Five Guys?
expectation to those that they have to really change anything? The expectation is that we as consumers can stop bringing a straw if we want to use it.
I think anybody that's a fast food or has takeout, they're gonna have to replace. I'm not gonna take that in my car. Only time I ever use a straw is in that situation. At a restaurant, I never use a straw. But if I'm mobile, driving.
Driving from Boston to
I don't
Chelmsford for a meeting, yeah.
Trust, people are gonna pull up who aren't from Chelmsford.
And expect a straw.
And expect a straw, especially if they have a kid in a car. So I think the concern is let's give them the time they need to comply with this so they don't lose business.
Would that be available, that the board has discretion under the way that this is written, or do we have to have a?
I'm not sure, I'm not a lawyer, Jim.
I made a commitment when I joined this board that I wasn't going to.
No, based on reading,
recommendations.
reading the way it's written, does it say that?
The Board of Health has discretion in order to enforce certain things, however, the way that it's written, it is a ban on the product, and they're required to turn over their surplus product at the time that it's stated in the article. Therefore, the way that I would read this, if we were to do it, is that they have to do away with their stock by that time and make the transfer by that time. And that's why I was concerned about the time.
Do you have a timeline that you think would be
I think that requires a little bit more reaching out to the businesses that are going to be impacted by this to see what realistically is going to work.
You let them know it's gonna happen.
If you put an exception, like a process or something in there from a warrant perspective, like.
You could, but I think it's still going to be ephemeral if you don't at least talk to them about what is realistic. Because I know, as I mentioned earlier, 2020 is the deadline that Starbucks has self-imposed themselves on straws. So it's going to be different for different corporations and different companies. So a step process potentially. I can't say for sure. I do know that the implementation by July may be tough for a lot of them.
I did make note of that in Westford, there were requests for extensions based on current supply and contracting. So I kind of was doing straws and styrofoams together. So I think that it's it's more of the same thing. There is a possibility, but I think it's a worthwhile venture to reach out to some of these places and get some more concrete information. What if?
Yeah, because we're asking it, it's definitely going to be asked,
Yeah, and we can, at least Nicole, we can say we talked to them about it.
I mean, if we're talking about changing habits, and the best way to do that, I think, is to, is to do it right out of the gate, versus having this problem where now you've got like potentially 3 or 4 companies in town saying we can't do this, and now you're finding us, but our corporation isn't letting us change what we're doing and we're losing the, I think if we do it right out of the gate, and if we give them a little more time, this might work out really well.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
I very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I want to use this.
Oh, yes. You get the old ones that rolled off the floor.
Okay, good.
Yeah, thank you.
In the back too. All four, yeah. Monday, 24th, we started at 7.
That's not part of the, so, okay, great. That needs a change, how you do it effectively. Next on our agenda, we have a presentation on a discussion of update to warrant articles as presented by the Board of Selectmen. It's kind of catch-all. We saw one for COS earlier. Wasn't quite sure what we have tonight, so I wanted to make sure we were able to get all of
I
them.
can start, I think Glenn Diggs is next door, and I think he's planning on coming over, but I can give you, if you can go in
There's something
order.
going on next door?
Yeah, Glenn would be, but if we go in order, I can give you an update on Article 2. Because I got your plate's gonna be full next week.
Yes.
You hope, so try to move them along. I put them in the order in which they were on your agenda. So that's why I did 22, 23, and then I started back at the beginning.
No, so I've got 12, I have 2, 11, 6, is it 2? 7, 6.
Oh, it's that.
I don't have 2.
You don't have, do I have 2?
No, I have 12, 11, 7,
You put 2 up there, okay, all right. We'll put it on, we got it on the screen, I apologize. Article 2 is the collective bargaining article. I'm pleased to report to you that we do have an agreement with or an arbitration award with the Chelmsford Police Patrol Officers Union, which is the Chelmsford Police Association Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 110. And the award funding amount is calculated by the town accountant is $158,023. Remember, it's a 3-year period that would expire this June 30th of 2019. If you go to the next slide, I give you the breakdown. Here's what's encompassed in the award, and I did email it out to you so you can see it and read it. The contract period is 3 years, July 1 of 16 through June 30th of 19. The fundamental changes in the contract is they increase the paid work week from 37.5 hours to 40 hours with no change in schedule. So what happened here, just to give you context, and I think it sort of isn't a text of decision, is we look at comparable towns, and more than half of the comparable towns, the officers work an 8-hour shift, but they get paid the full 8 hours. And oftentimes it's because you can sort of think the logistics of it. You know, just stopping to get a bite to eat, a call comes in, they're running. Chelmsford is as of today, is a 37.5 hour. So you work the 8-hour shift, you get paid for 7.5 hours. So part of the request from the union was we want to get paid 40 hours for the same work period. So do the math. 37.5 to 40 is 2.5. 2.5 over 37.5 is 6.67%. So that's the big enchilada in this. And because when you look at sort of the pattern of settlement and so forth, so therefore what you see also happening then is the wage schedule only increases by 0.5% for each of the fiscal years. The shift differential, which is the fact that second and third shift officers, because it's the non-daytime shift, much like you see in factories and other places, that differential would increase from $1.73 per hour to $2 per hour. And then on the town side, in terms of givebacks to the town, for lack of a better word, the firearms training time would be addressed as compensatory time instead of paid overtime. So that saves us some money in the budget because they take the time. And then we also have the light duty language, which when we're at the arbitration, the union said, you know, we're okay with light duty. However, we think we can offer some more constructive language. So we said, okay, we'll give it to the end of the calendar year, and then if not, we'll bring it back. In there, it's really not a concern because they want to get on light duty because getting back to work gives them the ability to earn more to put overtime details and so forth. So we don't see that as being contentious. So that is the essence of the agreement. The problem is today we met for 6 hours with the police superior officers of the sergeants union. That was unsuccessful. So just to put it into context, there are 7 sergeants in the union. They have 3 on the bargaining team. They were in this room. We were down the hall. The arbitrator came in. We have the management, labor reps, the attorneys, and so forth. Before us, obviously, we have all the other 13 other bargaining agreements that have been reached. The ones from the school teachers and custodians and the DPW and so forth for the same period. We have the fire arbitration award that we saw at the last town meeting, and we have this award. And unfortunately, despite all that, we couldn't reach agreement, a resolution. The arbitrator could not reach resolution, so she ordered the parties back in this room on October 19th, which unfortunately is past town meeting, and then basically what will happen is there'll be a formal hearing in this room where you exchange the 3-inch binders and back and forth testimony and witnesses and so forth. And then after that hearing, there'll be post-hearing briefs, and then there'll be some decision, probably sometime around the first of the year or so, would be my estimate. And so, unfortunately, like I said, the arbitrator came in and tried to resolve it almost in a mediator type of role, but was unsuccessful. So that's where we stand. So
in that situation,
yeah.
We can't obviously budget for.
Right. So what I will do then is we have free cash, as you know, and I'll also do that article later tonight.
We have free cash.
Right. But we will put in the balance of free cash. With my recommendation to put that into the stabilization fund, so that when the does get resolved, we can then appropriate from the stabilization fund to fund the agreement. Which is not trivial because you've got 3 years of funding. So anyway, that's where we are. So the good news is we do have an article or a contract that has to be funded by town meeting. Again, under the provisions of state law and arbitration, town administration and the board of selectmen is the executive authority. We present it favorably. We're required to do that, and it doesn't go to a vote of ratification by the Board of Selectmen or by the union. Then the town meeting makes its decision. If the town meeting funds it, it's accepted, we move on. If the town meeting were to reject it, we go back to the table. So that's where we are. So
and you wouldn't anticipate needing a special town meting in order to implement this, would you?
For the sergeants?
Yeah.
No, I think at that point you wait till April, because
Okay.
it's really the cost and the effort to convene a town meeting for that.
Far outplay
and
anything.
It's been outplayed, and we've seen awards in the past. If there were a special call, we bring it forward, but I don't think you'd call a special just for that sole purpose. So
This might be obtuse, but now you're gonna have to start renegotiating a new contract.
oh yeah, we were already.
Can we do a 6-year contract while we're there?
Well, that does come up, and it came up today. Could you do 3 years retro and then 3 years forward? Technically, if we were to reach agreement going forward, we really would need. In order for a contract to be valid, first of all, you can't go more than 3 years. So if you did the 3 years retro and 3 years forward, town meeting has to appropriate the money for the first year of a contract to make it valid.
Okay.
The problem is, I don't believe town meeting, and I talked to labor council about this, we could not go in October and fund a contract that becomes effective in FY20 because we're not appropriating 20. So if we were to reach agreement, we'd have the signed agreement and then we'd bring it in April. So the answer to your question is yes, but it's
there would be no consideration for the contract, and it's too far of a time in between.
Right.
Are you far apart, or is that something you can't discuss?
I mean, yeah, we're far enough apart that
It's far enough apart that
it's
we're going to
far
arbitration on the
it was
19th.
on the and like I said,
Was it close at all today? I mean, is there a point where you thought it might have happened?
yeah, you always have that hope. I haven't been in these situations, sit at the table. I mean, I think if you look at my words, you'll piece the puzzle together. We have a pattern of settlement of 2, 2, and 2. We also have the patrol award that was not 2, 2, and 2, but it went to the work weekly hours. So you can imagine the spectrum of items are on the table, but despite that spectrum, we weren't able to reach agreement. So you can kind of you can kind of see where we were at. And this is the last group. And So this is, that sort of situation.
We're good until June.
We're good till June. Yeah, exactly. And then we'll be back at it again. So that's the award. So again, going back to the motion, I'm seeking the $158,000 and this sort of from free cash. And this sort of goes to the bigger issue. And just to be thinking as you're doing this, because you're going to do your votes. I don't want to go through a situation where we're doing a mechanical exercise where we're funding from the levy and then we're using free cash to reduce the levy. Do you know what I'm saying? You get where I'm getting at, Jim? So,
I get it now.
And I know it's
I get it every year.
Exactly. So
And
anyway.
I think you go up every year trying to explain it.
Right. So so that's why I'm going to just fund everything from the. And that's if you want to go to. You heard from Phil Stanway. He was Article 6.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 7. He was 7. 5 and 6. Let me see if I can get Glenn, and then at the end I can do the stabilization and free cash and tax levy articles, which you have them in front of you. You can see where I'm going. But let me see if Glenn's next door. If not, because he said he was going to present.
Are we taking numbers on how fast we get to the mic and town meeting?
Oh, yeah,
I'm done with going up the mic to the
No,
plan. And then every 6 months.
last year's speech.
That's just plan.
Just play it.
Yeah.
It really is never ends, it's alive.
Present to the.
Thank you, thank you.
Nice tie,
Try to pull your
Well, and what?
next door.
From one meeting to the next.
This one is a little quiet.
A little more levity.
Yes.
Snazzy tie. I like your tie.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, very nice.
All right.
He didn't say which one you want me to talk about.
I don't know. Hey, you're going to point in here.
Ambulance and fire station.
As you know, at last town meeting, there was a proposal that we close one of the fire stations and move firemen to another station to comply with the arbitration award. And it seemed like a fairly solid plan, had a lot of merit. However, it went to town meeting and was turned down, in which case this town had to fund that arbitration award as it was awarded. The feeling was that the town is basically at the levy limit. We have limited resources. We are paying our bills, we have a nice bond rating, so forth and so on. But looking toward the future, we felt that it was warranted to have a study apart from just feelings and having actual data done professionally, and having people in the town who are professionals in these areas participate to come up with a study. Probably takes a year, and to hire an outside consultant who has expertise in these matters to study the possibility that we would close one or more stations, add on to one or more stations, close stations, rebuild a new station, so forth, so that there's nothing to say that in the next arbitration award, if it goes to arbitration next time around, that they come back and say, well, last time we insisted that you put 3 people on a truck. We'd like you to put a third person on another station. In which case, it just perpetuates itself. And that ultimately, we would be better served by spending more money up front and saving money in the long run. But we don't have the expertise to do that, and that's why we're requesting funds to hire someone. In addition, the study is combined with studying the ambulance service. Most towns, it seems, have their own ambulance service. We do not. And that the feeling is that there would be a tremendous amount of money saved by having our own in-house ambulance people. Additionally, there would have to be space for that, and that could be part of the whole study of the station, the multi-stations or a new central station, whatever the case may be. But the idea is that we want to spend money, in theory, to save money. And the town has historically spent money, for example, in facility studies of the schools, which was spending money to spend money. And in this case, we feel that it would be ideal to do it. It hasn't been done in a long time officially to have a professionally look at this way.
and to bring it to town meeting and request the funds to do it. And that's the reason for it.
Can I ask you where the $85,000 figure came from?
Yes, Emily Antle, who is on the Board of Selectmen, has spearheaded the effort. She has contacted several companies in this regard and what it would cost to do this kind of study. The maximum that was suggested was $85,000. We felt that we should go with that number. It may be less than that, but as you know, the facility study for the school, they asked for $200,000, and then they came back and asked for more money. We felt we wouldn't want to do that. We would feel better if we returned money if we didn't spend it.
Mm-hmm. And so I get it, you mentioned the feeling. I guess I'm wondering where the feeling is coming from for the change from the municipal internet service from the current structure.
Because because most of the studies that Emily has done, and she has looked at extensively, most of the towns that do this, in fact, all the towns that she's contacted that do this, and consultants who do these studies, say that the town is giving up a tremendous amount of money by not having the internet service in-house. Not close money, a lot of money. And
the town itself, or is it?
The town would be gaining that money.
Because you're taking on personnel to do this, and also
even after all the expense.
Even after all the expense, including personnel and benefits.
The net could be $1 million.
That's what everyone's talking. Okay.
So, can I ask a question?
Sure.
What type of professional focus on just this?
There are companies that do these studies, municipal studies.
Just for fire?
For fire safety.
Public safety, they're public safety consulting firms.
You'll pay here,
Yes, and there are several professional companies.
And the way I heard you describe this, it's just kind of an open look at Chelmsford. Here's what we are. Here's who we are. What should we have? They could come back and say, people, we got.
It's possible, but
it's very
unlikely. Very unlikely.
Okay.
Yes, because if you're going to close, history will tell us just at the last town meeting, if you're going to close a fire station, you better have a lot of documentation and proof that that is something that is worthwhile for the town, because it's worse than talking about chickens.
Is it? Is it though?
Well, we'll find out on October 15th.
Yeah, well, I guess so.
It's, the town one time had a railroad that went through the town. And it made a lot of sense to have multiple fire stations because you could get cut off and so forth and so on. That no longer is the case. I don't have the answer. I don't have the expertise to do this. We need to get some people who have expertise to say that, the time that it takes to go from here to here, you're going to add 3 seconds. Well, the townspeople may feel 3 seconds is not too much. It's too much. We just had a whole debate about the dispatch and about the time that might add to something. Sooner or later, the town has to understand that it's guns or butter. We can't have everything. And we should do our due diligence and have professionals help us to make those decisions correctly.
Well, and it's also a third party, someone who has no
stake
skin in the game.
That's right.
So the $85,000 is for the consultant, but it also says ad hoc committee.
Well, there's a committee of our own people. The professionals that we have in town that have knowledge of this, the chief of police, the fire chief, so forth and so on, would be part of that committee as well. And there should also be, I would think, someone from the finance committee, because this is a big money question. But it will take.
I see the way you're reading, Kathy.
Yeah,
and I
this
see
is a year.
This isn't like by springtime meeting.
No.
This is by potentially.
By fall.
Maybe.
Maybe, correct. A lot of things to look at.
Yeah.
It's almost like, it almost sounds like the selectmen choose who the consultant is. Because the way that's worded to me.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah, but the way I'm reading that is like.
And they create the committee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you volunteering?
To be an expert, of course, on
Yeah.
anything.
All right, I'll do it. Yeah.
What are you?
I just, the way I'm reading it, it sounds almost like the committee was gonna determine.
Well, there was some
Like
talk
the
about
select-
forming a committee and then asking for the money, but that doesn't make any sense. If you don't have the money, you're not gonna study it.
Right.
Yeah, you have to take you have to compare the parentheses out and read it as to be spent by the board of selectmen for the first hiring consultant to examine whether the town should establish,
Yeah.
et cetera. And by the way, they're also doing a ad hoc committee for public study, because someone's gonna, if they had not put that in there, someone at town meeting would say, well, what about a committee?
Yeah.
Where's the committee that's gonna talk about this one that must be have a report?
Right.
But I see the way that you're reading it. Yeah.
It's the chicken or the egg, but in this case, the egg is the money.
No, I agree that, yeah, the parentheses need to come out and the thing about the committee needs to go down at the bottom. Because it does read confusing.
Well, it's already there. I mean,
No,
that's
I know.
that's the warrant. It's been signed, but we know what it means because it's been explained. But okay. Anybody else have any questions? All right. Explain. We already.
He's got number 6 too.
Well, that's right. He has number 6 too. Although we also have Susan Gates coming next Thursday to speak on it as well. Just to let you know, Phil Scanlon was here earlier.
Okay.
He briefly spoke on the Article 7.
He was at our meeting Monday night.
Monday night,
I'm sure he explained the same.
Yeah, no, when we reached out to him, he said, oh, by the way, I've been every night this week late. So we took him first. But yeah, if you could just briefly discuss Article 6, and then we'll speak with Susan on next Thursday.
All right, Article 6 is the
CCA.
All right. At your last meeting, I talked a little bit about it to kind of give you a kind of a heads up overview, and the feeling is the same. That the general feeling is that the Chelmsford and the Yards is an extension of the economic development of the town. You know, if you look at the school system is part of the economic development of the town. Anything that is done in this town that sells the town, the parade is part of the economic activity of the town. So anything that we do that promotes the town and makes it attractive to outside companies or future residents who choose the town is an economic development part. It may not be called that, but it is part of that. And the CCA is certainly a figurehead of that activity, that they run great programs. And the idea was that we should supply them with some money to enhance what they have, to help them make money. That, you know, I talked to Susan and she said, we take in X amount of money, we spend the money, and one of the things we don't have is we don't have any money left over for advertising, which means that although their functions are well attended, they could be more well attended. It's like you have a trolley car and you have 50 seats, but you got only 25 people riding in the car. If you get those other 25 full, it doesn't cost you any more to fill those seats, per se. But the idea is, how do you get them to do that? And at the same time, they have a need for some more technical expertise, something that volunteers can't supply, that you've got to pay for that, you've got to hire someone part-time to facilitate that. So the idea is that we would provide the money as a one-time grant, and then we would sit back and see what she does with the money, and see if that money does make money. And if it does, maybe we scale it back next time, or change it a little bit here, or skip it here, whatever the case may be. But analyze it. But the idea is to get it out there first, and see what can happen. Again, the idea is to help her to spend money, and make it more self-sufficient.
So I think next Thursday we'll get a better idea as to how she plans to spend said money. I'd love to know what she's taking in currently, what she's spending it on, what the shortfall is, and how this is affecting it. Because, as you said, this is a one-time deal. If this becomes something that she's looking for annually, that becomes an issue, or at least further discussion as to how things are being done. I guess my concern would be how sustainable that would be going forward. Based upon what the production is and what the benefit for the town. And she puts together a great program, I can't fault her for that. They had great things to come in.
And it's something you may ask her, you know, if town meeting does approve it, you may ask her to come in mid-year and speak to you about how the money's been spent and, you know, how it's
I
going.
think it's important that she has a plan of how she's gonna spend it. Too much
Well, definitely.
yes, right? Like, it's, well, what is this gonna be for, right? Like, she needs to come and say, we're gonna do this with this, this with this, and this with this.
You know,
As opposed to
it's
just-
not like you have a child and here's $5 and you're gonna spend it on that. By the time they spend it, had nothing to do with what they told you.
Yeah, but you know, you know.
Yeah, so you need the plan.
Yeah.
And I think she's prepared to do that.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
because, I mean, this phenomenal job, she just spends a lot of time. I mean,
She does. I want to make sure that at the end of the day, we need to, if we're going to support something like this, we need to say that this is economically feasible. It makes sense. We're not throwing good money against bad, but we're throwing money into a profitable enterprise that's going to produce dividends for the town. And she, again, great program. I can't follow it. I'd love to hear her speak next week and tell us about what she plans on doing.
And I think you're right, the finding terminology is dividends for the town.
I mean, I'd love to see. I'd love to see what her numbers are for attendance and everything like that, and what she has plans on increasing that attendance. I know, at least on the weekends, you're going to wait an hour at Fishbones at least. Everything down there is full. I'd love to see how full she is, and if it's actually if there's going to be some sort of.
Well, part of it is if she can drive more attendance, maybe we could have more lessons.
Yeah.
And we get a piece of all that money.
Maybe. We'll see what she says next week and what she presents.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
All right, Paul.
So that,
Like a jackrabbit tonight.
so that brings us basically to the last two financial articles.
Yep.
Which is
They're all
11 and 12.
Can we briefly talk about the amendment to the operating budget for
Sure.
Article 3?
Yeah.
Do you have numbers for that yet? Or for
Yes,
numbers for that?
yes,
That's what we are voting next week.
did
You're
I
not
not,
be here.
did I not present these? I think it's 33, did I say? Yeah,
Is it in there?
it's 33,681. And that would be for, just for the personnel services community. Let me mention this. There was considerable discussion between myself, and you'll probably get, there was considerable discussion between myself and the Sue Rosa, the health agent, regarding whether the additional resources needed to be full-time or half-time. The Board of Health, believed strongly that they needed full-time, and part of their consideration was in lieu of the fact that these other demands may be coming upon them in terms of the styrofoam containers and the plastic bags and so forth. So that's part of their calculus. I didn't want you to think that that this would then be on top of that.
Further. Okay,
Exactly.
good.
Because I know that was a question that arose earlier this evening.
Oh, yes.
Well, wait a minute, you're asking them now, look at single-use plastic bags.
So she saw the writing on the wall.
Exactly. And so that would push them to the, so.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So anyway, I just thought that was
Thanks for that
helpful.
clarification.
All right, so then when you get to Article 11, as you know, there was discussion about, came up last year and they came to the selections meeting, well, why isn't it an article on the warrant to use free cash to use the tax levy? So I put that on there because that was the directive that I had. My recommendation is no action. And if you go to 12, that's sort of the companion article because at the end of all these articles, it's sort of what's your balance? And what I'm requesting at this point would be, based on everything that has been requested, including the patrol settlement, the balance would be $649,199 to put into the stabilization fund. If you go to the next slide, John, I'll sort of get you how I got there. The stabilization fund balance right now is $9,747,766. Spring annual town meeting, we transferred out 180. You may recall, we had the award for the firefighter award. Then we also reduced the reserve fund by $245,000. And so as we sit here today, if you do all the calculations from the free cash balance of the 996, you take away all the articles that have been requested, the 3,000 for the open space stewards, the request for the Center for the Arts, and so forth, that leaves you at $649,199. So my request to you, since I won't be here on Thursday night, is that if you make different requests, then just make the change in the balance. So that way, and we'll go in concert with that. But I basically just did the math of, okay, what do we start out with, and then what's the balance left over when you take in all the articles that are funded from free cash. And so the problem is now that 649, as you go forward, why that's necessary is, one is, again, we still don't have the funding for the sergeants. We're operating with a historically low reserve fund in the year. And, you know, if you start factoring that out, you're at a place where you've got a few $100,000 left, $300,000 or $400,000 left, and we've got a $101 million levy. I mean, I just think that in prudence, we should take that fund and put it into the stabilization fund, because as our budget grows and the unknowns coming in, you know, I just think that's the way to go. And that's why I didn't like the idea of doing this paper transition of, we're gonna fund these things from the levy and then come back and then take the free cash and reduce the levy. Because at the end of the day, and John's here, and I met with John and Darlene after the last meeting, and we're, as we indicated, and John can probably speak, we're up against the wall on the levy limit. And yeah, I don't think you want to add, John, but.
No, and I just think, you know, when we left the last town meeting on that, we all know we had another labor contract award. We're right up against the levy, as Paul said. We now have another labor award. I just think, we've talked last week, we gave a little preview of fixed costs, notably Middlesex. You know, we don't know what health insurance will bring in the next year. I just think that to be prudent.
And when the final cherry sheets came out, remember they say that it was adverse. It wasn't to the positive.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I know the charter school enrollment number fluctuates, but the bottom line is, based on the actual cherry sheets of what Downey had to submit that levy for, that pushed us in the wrong direction as well. So all the more reason why, you know. And also, John, you can tell what you talk to the assessors about as well, is they'll be submitting their new growth number. You know, it's not 2.8 million. What a surprise! No. It's you know, it's right where, you know, we figured we would be. So I guess the summary is we didn't catch a break anywhere. And I just think that, you know, we're in a spot now, like you said, where we've got to be sensible, and therefore, if you saw the meeting on Monday night with the selectmen, when it came to the discussion on the Center for the Arts, I said, I don't want you to have the impression that this should be a sustainable article, because I can't make that commitment at this time. And the reason is that now you look at the envelope of services, because if I'm giving $30,000 for the Center for the Arts, the analogy I made on Monday night, that means I'm not using that $30,000 to put a full-time resource officer in the middle schools, and so that's the trade-off of items. And quite frankly, as the chair just said here, you know, revenue opportunities have been foregone as recently as Monday night with the regional dispatch, as recently with the Route 40 zoning, as recently with closing a fire station, and so forth. And my concern going forward is, I think as we prepare this budget for this winter, we're going to have a tri-board meeting in probably early December, after the fall town meeting is done, after the selectmen make their determination on tax classification. And then we need to get into a room in closed session and say, look, how are we going to handle the collective bargaining thing? And what I've asked Jeannie Parzielli, our Human Resources Director, and Mike McCall, my assistant, is I think we need, and I've asked them to get a proposal, is we need to do a comprehensive salary analysis of the entire town, union and non-union. And I met with the superintendent on Tuesday morning, and I suggested he do the same for the schools. That we just can't go on with this, well, we may budget a blanket amount, as you know, the schools can hold on to monies, but as we're planning the FY20 budget, there's a likelihood we won't have our contract settled, but that doesn't mean the liability is not there. And we need to know where we're going. And so, you know, and as you said earlier, we're gonna have this impact on this stormwater surcharge as well, and so we need to know as best we can where we're going. And so therefore, I don't feel comfortable sort of trying to portray that, we can do all things to all people. I really think that, the schools that are in a good position, financially solid right now, our goal is to make sure that we can sustain our service levels and come to the expected of the community. So therefore, that's my long-winded way of saying I'm not recommending anything under 11, and I think the prudent thing to do is to take the balance of free cash after all the other articles are addressed, put it in stabilization to meet the need, because we all saw where we were 6 months ago when we had to deal with the snow and ice and the facilities. And I can tell you, just to give you a preview, Gary has a major drainage problem on Ansty Road that has to be addressed. And meaning that we're gonna have to hire a contractor because the drainage pipe in the easement is deteriorated, and it's a job, quite frankly, that his men can't do because it's that deep down. It's one of those trench box jobs, and that may be something, we're still getting a handle on. It's not ready for this town meeting, but we're gonna initiate the project. But those are the kind of things that come at us, that when we reconcile things in the spring at the town meeting, so.
Our next bond rating is in June.
It'll be next June.
Yeah, because we just had one in this previous June.
The decrease reserve fund.
And the GASB audit report will show us that that like all most communities, we technically, under GASB standards, we operated in the red this year. It's not unusual, but it's not as real because we didn't fully fund our OPEB obligation. And we missed that by $700,000. So anyway, that's the basis of my recommendation. And it does, at least keep us hopefully where we should be. And like you said, and you see it's going real fast. I mean, we're here, you're gonna get your book out in a few weeks, we're gonna be at town meeting. And then all of a sudden, John's getting his budget directives out to the town boards in 3 weeks. And then like I said, we're gonna have a very comprehensive meeting in late November, early December, where we're looking at things. By then also the election will be over, and we'll sort of know if the landscape will remain the same as well.
Speaking of the election, will the,
Oh yeah,
recount
there's
cost-
another one, yeah, that's a cost as well.
Yeah.
I'm mentioning that, yeah, we will have.
You like that funny man?
Yeah, we will have, in fact.
See, maybe we should have just had them take over our election stuff too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Well, and you know what else is gonna come out of it? You read it? Lowell was using 1998 ballot boxes. Did you read that? So what do you think's gonna happen? They're gonna get, the legislature's gonna give them the money to buy the ballot boxes.
Instead of like, we had to buy our
Instead of
own.
buying our own.
Yeah.
You know that's coming, Lowell and Lawrence, right? Mark my words.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, we are bringing in a full squad on Saturday.
Yeah, I talked to Tricia the other day.
Of counters, because we have to manually recount all 9 precincts. And so they'll be there probably setting up at 7:30, they're gonna bring the ballots in at 10 minutes to 8, and from 8 o'clock till when they finish.
Will this be overseen by somebody from the Secretary of State?
No.
Lawrence and Lowell.
No, Lawrence and Lowell, they're taking it over.
What happens is they have to do it individually because each party has a person there overseeing each ballot that's counted. And what they're looking for are pretty much the stray ballots in terms of, if it was marked as blank, but maybe the person circled the name or made a check mark, and therefore they can claim it as their own. But they have to manually go through each ballot. So yes, that's gonna cost us money that wasn't in the elections budget. And what I didn't, to be full disclosure, what I have not chosen to do is I chose not to have town council be there at $200 an hour for up to 8 hours, because I don't think it's necessary. But we did make arrangements with town council to be available to be reached should something issue arise, because quite frankly, unlike the cities, we don't have that many provisional ballots. I think we had 8, and 7 of them were Republican. So there's only one ballot. And it turned out it didn't matter which of the two, so we were clear there. So we're not gonna have it, so I'm trying to be sensible, talking to the clerk and town council today, because some towns are. I mean, Concord's having their town council at the recount, and we certainly know Lowell and Lawrence are. And so we said, we're not doing it. And I talked to some solicitors. Yeah, exactly. And I talked to some of my peers, and they're not doing it either. But it's just, severe. It is costly. We just didn't, we're just trying to keep it manageable.
Well, it's sort of a who would have thunk it. I mean.
Yeah. But it's an unforeseen cost. And So yeah, we will be doing that on Saturday, and that's open to the public. If anybody wants to come, they can see them. They're gonna do it in the gym.
I'm gonna be here, I'm an employee that day.
Yeah. Do it in the gym. Fortunately, the gym.
I'm a reader, I think I'd say what it says on the thing, and someone else
Somebody checks it off and then they count, but fortunately
I
the
might just
gym,
come down just to check it out.
it's nice, well, the gym now has, the new window, it's very nice and bright.
So just as a public service announcement, folks are watching it, that's the reason that the community shred day has been relocated to 9 Alpha Road.
Because we didn't want to do the shredding.
Why ever not?
They might get mixed up.
Something $8,000, what did the last time?
And then you have the Secretary of State's office coming out.
Yeah, exactly. So the cost for that, is that, when we know the cost for that?
She'll probably have it calculated next week, but,
Yeah.
you know, my sense is, we can probably handle that in the spring. I mean, I don't, you know.
I was saying, we have a reserve fund.
Or reserve fund, yeah.
Is that unforeseen cost that.
Yeah,
It's definitely unforeseen.
But she also has the cost for the November election that we don't fully realize.
Well, that's true too.
We fully don't know because that's gonna be
Well,
early.
you never know, there might be a recount there
That's
too.
gonna be early.
That's true too.
That's right, it's gonna be early voting and everything
Yeah,
else,
of course.
so, you know, so, we'll see.
But it's fascinating, I wouldn't mind having the insight, have someone tell me exactly what did happen in Rome, because it sounds very confusing.
Well, it
You
seems
can tell it
like,
off here, but.
based on the reading of the articles that I read, was that the handling of the counting of the votes was inappropriate and not in line with the rules. And then what they handed over when requested by the Secretary of State's office was not in accordance with the rules.
There was much discussion at the city council meeting last night.
Yeah.
And it's hard, because you don't wanna undermine the confidence in the election,
No.
but at the same time, you gotta point out the irregularities.
Yeah.
A very delicate walk.
If you're wondering what happened, I would recommend watching now.
The Lowell City Council meeting.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Do they put it on YouTube like we do?
It's similar. If you go to the city council website, you'll be able
That'd be
to.
interesting to watch.
Alright, so anyway, I will not physically be here, I'll be in Vermont next week from tomorrow, but I will be able to be reached because John and Mike will be here, and you know, I'm sure you'll be fine. And like I said, the selectmen did vote those dollar amounts last night, that's why I wanted Glenn to come in and report.
That was great,
The costs and everything else, at least this way you can capture that as your computer.
That's perfect. We all know that in Vermont, we won't be even able to call you.
Wireless cell phone.
No cell phone.
I was there for 4 days this summer, and I
couldn't get a hold of
it. Yeah.
I'm gonna be in Woodstock, it's not that far.
Oh, you'll be fine.
I'm about 40 years too late.
All right,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna unearth my agenda here. All right, discussion on future meetings and timeline of finance committee warrant book production. So, and thank you for circulating that today, Pam. Because like I said, although I said that and I still have a copy of it here. Yeah, so we're still working. Obviously, the 19th is the day that the letter is going to come.
I changed that on the one I sent out.
Yeah. So we're still on a crunch. We're going to vote next week. I know two of you will be arriving after the school meetings, and we'll talk to Jay again about the scheduling of those.
Yes.
But
Oh, no, we won't, we don't have one.
Next, you guys don't have.
Ours is the 27th.
the 27th. Oh, okay.
So it's just me.
Those are good, just you. Okay.
Tomorrow and the 27th.
All right.
Yeah.
So we are meeting next Thursday.
We are meeting next Thursday, and then we will actually be live next Thursday.
And
There's also a request for us to update our photo. So
Yay.
yeah, you guys.
Do that after though.
We're doing it after, unless we will cut out of you.
Yeah, we do a cut.
We can just pull up. You know.
Slowly in.
It's
possible.
Yes.
Do I have to dress up for that?
You don't have to dress up
Just
for that.
depends
It's
on
not
how you want
required.
to see.
There's no dress code.
No vulgarity on your shirt.
I'm saying.
You know, but it's gonna be a huge project in that. So do our votes that night and then try to turn everything right away. I know the first, you just sent around the first draft of the book too, didn't you? Or did I see that?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was a schedule.
It was a schedule, okay. All right, I was looking at it, so I was running out of the office. Yeah, it's gonna be a crunch. So we're gonna get a quick turnaround, mainly a crunch on my part. But I'll get that out as soon as possible, so everybody can have the comments to it. Take a look at the book. But we're gonna, just like last year, it's gonna be a marathon night where we push through and get all the votes done. So hopefully it won't be like last year, where we were here until 11:30. But it's possible.
We do have numbers for every article, right?
We have numbers for every article, and we have a few presentations next week to start things off.
Recycle.
We're gonna have hopefully recycling next week. We definitely have the CCA in next week. She'll just be buffering what she's gonna have to proceed with the funds or anything like that. And we're hoping to have some sort of explanation of the zoning bylaw and, excuse me. Next
Somebody
week.
from the planning board?
Yeah. So we're talking display of flags for properties, animals, accessory dwelling, which is going to be a hot button at town meeting, based upon planning board's current issues with that.
What number is that?
17 is the animals, accessory dwellings. They're looking to decrease the square footage that's required.
No, I was a little curious where.
16, 17, they're all zoning bylaws are already there, 16 through 20. The historical preservation reuse, the revision of the definition of multi-family dwelling, and then the removal of the 278 and 282 from commercial exclusion zone, we have 129. So those all they all arguably have financial implications. We'll at least want to have kind of some sort of sense of what they're aiming to do with those and how they're presenting those, so that we can provide some sort of recommendation next week. I put it, I'm going to be looking at last week's agenda actually. So I think we're on to new business, old business rather. Anything lingering from last week? I know with you not here, Kathy, you didn't have a chance to see it, you weren't live last week. We aren't this week either. We decided to have the vote on reorganization probably in November or December, like we used to. And the discussion was, we moved it a couple years ago, Tom passed away, just because we needed someone to step into that position. And we kept it that way because it worked. But if there's been change, it's a scramble to prepare the book and get ready for town meeting. And the old schedule was budget season, budget, amendments to the budget, and fall town meetings, and we need to reorganize. So I think that timeline makes more sense.
Okay,
And
thank
we
you.
decided just to move them. And you weren't here, so we wanted to make sure we had a full committee here when we did the vote. So that's been moved, and that's just an update. New business?
I have a question. So if since we're gonna do the reorg vote in November, December, if we end up having to do a tri-board meeting, could we just meet before that?
We
so
could,
that
if we
it's
publicly
separate?
post a meeting, yeah, if we publicly post a meeting, we can certainly
I'm
meet
just
before
thinking
that.
that time of year is tough for everybody to.
Yeah, of course. No, probably meeting that, we can definitely do it that night. We just set the meeting for that night before the tri-board meeting.
Yeah.
And do it then.
Because we don't need, it's not like it's gonna take us.
No, what shouldn't?
No.
Who knows?
I mean, unless Dave gets problems.
We'd be hotly contested who can say, Jim, you've done an excellent job.
Again.
I think town council might need to be there.
Yeah. Public comment? Not much public, no press. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, see you guys next Thursday.
You don't say aye, you just